Okay, thank you very much for coming. Could I ask what I normally ask for? If people at the back, they could move up front, and then makes it much easier for everyone. And okay, the senior management team and of course all of you staff present here, I thank you for coming, and I welcome you to the second open forum for staff. As I have often said, it's very important for staff to have the ability and in an open way to raise their concerns, to input new ideas, ask questions of the Vice Chancellor or any member of the team. And so I regard this as a very important part of inclusion and very important part of getting feedback. This becomes even more important when an institution is in the throes of major changes. And this is not limited to USP. Nearly every university in the world, every company in the world, every government in the world is going through very major changes. And for us, we have committed to transforming the university from good to excellent. It's a very big ask. And so many things need to be done. The council wants to know every 6 months exactly what you have achieved. The EC wants to know 4 times a year what has been achieved. Finance Committee wants to know 4 times a year what has been achieved. And in between, governments want to know what is happening. So I think when that kind of interest and when that kind of expectation is there, naturally, those who are held accountable for what happens and doesn't happen are all trying to rapidly make sure that new processes are in place. We are measuring what is happening, and the major deliverables of the university are actually being achieved, measured, and validated and demonstrated to the stakeholders. So all the more reason for us. And obviously, there are many ways of getting to the results that you want. And what we have always tried to do is to engage all those who are involved, whether they be students or staff or governments and other stakeholders, so that everybody is part of the solution. And the solution is not always with the Vice Chancellor or the senior management. They carry a little bit more responsibility than others to lead, and they are certainly accountable. But the solution really ought to be with all of us. And this is especially so for a knowledge institution. And staff have been very forthcoming. So I regard this as an important forum, especially as we now come to making the last-ditch effort to conclude this strategic plan. And as I will talk about later, begin the process of reflection and deep thinking about where do you want to go as a university for the next so many years. Just as we did when we started this transformational journey, we planned for the strategic plan in 11 and 12, we were asking these questions. What do you want USP to be like in 2018? Now we have to ask the same question. What would you like the university to look like in 2024? And also be aware of what is happening around the world beyond that. And then begin to design the next plan. Now we've had a whole series of meetings recently. We just concluded the executive committee meeting, and we had that preceded by the finance committee meeting, and we have had many meetings of the 50th anniversary steering committee. They have all been relatively happy with the progress that the university is making. They have been mindful of areas where they would like to see more speedy action or deeper action. But by and large, I think the assessment that anybody is making at the moment is that the university is tracking very significantly towards the vision of excellence. Not everything is being achieved, and not everything was expected to be achieved. Because you can't take a university of 48, 49 years and make it excellent in 6 years. Universities look at themselves in terms of centuries and decades. So it was always an aspirational goal. But nonetheless, there are so many achievements, and many of you who have been here before can vouch for the fact that this university feels and looks very different from what it was 5, 6, 8, 10 years ago. Okay? It certainly carries a huge more reputation than it ever did. And it is actually envied and admired. So all of that is, of course, the result of the dedication and efforts of all of you and many who have contributed and are no longer with us. The main, of course, what I do is I speak a few things and I want to then leave it open to questions. I want to highlight that in the more recent time, or possibly, in the more recent times, we've been preoccupied with two things, essentially. One is having very deep reflection on the strategic plan, and particularly looking at why is it that we are not tracking well in certain areas. And for certain areas, there are good explanations, and we don't have to worry about it. We wanted a knowledge hub. It was always based on funding by donors. Nobody funds it. We don't have it. There's nothing very serious to worry about. It was always not funded. When we did the strategic plan, only a very small portion of it was funded. The rest were unfunded. We hope that by putting in the SP, we would be able to interest some donors. We did try, it didn't happen. We will miss the targets on 3,000 beds for student accommodation. We were never funded for that. Donors have stopped funding accommodation. We have introduced a new mechanism for loans. After 32 years or so, we built new accommodation. And possibly, if everything goes okay, we could be close to 2,000 beds, right? 1,800 beds. That's a long way from 3,000, but it's also a long way from where we were. So I think one can say that's pretty good achievement. But there are areas like completion rates, where we are not tracking, and we need to really make the university more efficient in many of those areas. We have been looking at whether finance is being provided. whether the people are being involved, whether people are thinking about it, whether the case is that SMT knows about it, the deans know about it, maybe the heads of schools know about it, but the staff who are supposed to actually be the people who will do things are not actually all coming together in their teams and planning properly and doing things. So we are now agreed for next year that we will have quite major changes in the way we do the SP work. For the first time, we have made sure that we don't allocate any money to anything without a plan and a detailed plan, and detailed plan going back to the KPIs that the university has, and no money will be blocked off. It will be allocated to the activities from the end of this year. Not like we keep $600,000-700,000 for something and then come March, April, that money becomes available and then we complain about not implementing those things. So I think there will be major changes. The second thing we have been doing is, after the approval of the council in May this year, and they approved a roadmap as to how the new strategic plan should be constructed and the timelines and the procedures for it. We have actually started the process, and we have tried to engage staff and students. You have all been invited to participate in setting the vision and mission of the university, and there have been competitions, and there have been working groups led by the priority area leaders, and we will have a major strategic planning workshop bringing possibly close to 70, 75 people across the university, including all the regional campus directors, to begin to iron out in more concrete terms what should be the main objectives of the university, what are the gaps and lessons from the current plan, so that we can go to the council and say, in draft terms, everything going to council is draft terms, we believe that these should be that should be the vision of the university, that should be the mission of the university. In broad terms, the priority areas should be these, should they be the same as in current plan, new plans? And what are the big 20, 30 objectives of the university? And what would you like the university to be in 2024? So that if the council blesses all of that, we then go on to do all the detailed work that we need to do. So that's what's been occupied. And of course, while you're doing all of those things, the operational work of the university continues. And graduations have to happen, regional campus work has to be done, staff grievances have to be attended to, students have to be attended to. So all of that goes on. We are pleased that after a long sort of period and considerable frustration, I think, on both sides, we now have the separation of academic and professional staff done. Council gave us some funds of $900,000 or so. That is now being implemented, letters are being sent out, and the new scale will apply from 1 November. So we can tick that off with some sense of satisfaction. That means that we have now embarked on the review, triennial review of the salaries for academic staff and for senior management. And the remuneration committee, which has overall oversight of remuneration, received papers from ourselves at the last meeting, have approved the process, and work had been, and in fact the interim director was proactive. He'd already engaged Liz Barry, who was our consultant for the last round of review. So that we are hoping that after council, we will be able to go back to remuneration committee with final agreement that we have reached. Was not final until the council says so, but final pretty much from the management and staff side. And hopefully, very hopefully, it could be all done by the end of this year to be effective, to be implemented from 1 January next year, but going back to 1 January 2016. This is how the triennial salary adjustments work. They cover the 3 years. And the same has been applied for the senior management, except that we are more involved in the academic side of the salaries, and the consultant to the remuneration committee does bulk of the work for senior management. And senior management will also have job sizing done, because the last one was 2012, I think, and the portfolios change, and it's normal practice for sizing of the jobs to be done before the review is undertaken. We are very pleased that with the unions, nearly all of the major issues have been resolved. We have signed 2 important agreements with the Staff Association. One was, of course, the staff, delinking. And the other one is to do with creating a new band for TAs that raises the top salary scale for TAs, and we've relaxed the teaching requirement, because essentially you want to be able to pick up people who are really bright, do not impose teaching experience requirements, but then along the way you provide a movement and a different band for people who come with the excellence of academic qualifications, but also experience and other things. So that has happened, and also we have, as part of that, agreed that the TAs, that there will be a much better differentiation of different categories of staff, and so the TAs will now have a master's degree, and as I said, they need not have experience. They can come in without any teaching experience, and then they go on to the second band when they have got some teaching experience and other attributes. In the same one, as part of the university's effort to have clearly, there's a rationality around the categories, the IELTS will now need a PhD, so that the university keeps on pushing the bar and keeps on differentiating itself from the other providers, and aims to have staff who are fully capable of delivering on both the teaching, research, innovation, and engagement expectations of the university. So we are very pleased with all of that. We are very pleased that the Solomon Island campus, new campus, is tracking very well. We've been spending a lot of time on ensuring that the pretty bad conditions in Solomon Island campus are ameliorated, and we are taking a new property there, so that when we say USP stands for quality, that all students associated with USP can feel that. Certainly Solomon Island students have not been feeling that. They look at great envy at all the other campuses. For next year, we are going to work much harder on ensuring that the lecture capture is implemented fully. We have made new investments this semester, so that all major lecture rooms are now connected, and that staff will be directed by DVC LTSS to ensure that all of those lectures are recorded. Because what we found this year is that when the system was established, nearly everybody was recording. And then as we went on, that number dropped. And that, of course, you can't have that drop because you are promising everybody in the region that all these lectures are available, they enroll in blended mode, and therefore it's a real problem. So we'll try to do that. We'll try and do some training. We will try and automate the recording, do all the things that we can to facilitate such a thing. And we will continue to implement our mobile learning platform so that the tablet computers, I'm pleased that tablet computers for next year are being bought this year so that they will all be out in the region. And if we have any flexibility around funding, we will relax the requirements, I think, by expecting people in the region to have 8 courses enroll in degree studies. Doesn't always work out, so I think we'd like to see whether we can relax it downwards. And frankly, my vision would be to really see every USP student have a device. And of course, we are going to improve bandwidth to go with that. We are very pleased that after many years of trying and working on, the European Union projects are now coming on board slowly. Still a lot of work, a lot of bureaucracy. But that will see USP actually engage quite strongly in the region. It will also receive significant funding, which we need. Because essentially, the university has a lot of expectations of itself. The governments have a lot of expectations. We are being compared with benchmarks. But Australia and New Zealand universities are far better funded. And it's only to a point that you can stretch everything. We must receive more funding. Part of that is bringing funding from somewhere. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether it's external funding, government funding, but we need that funding. And I think what I'm trying to say is under EDF over the next, I think EDF is a 10-year cycle, so some of these projects will go on. I think we are being positioned quite well. So I'd like to thank all the staff, and in particular the Director of Development, Marketing and Communications, who basically coordinates all of our work on development, and in this case seeking funds from the European Union. We are reminded constantly that we can't become excellent unless we all become more accountable for our performance. And so we are working slowly. The Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation and International, and the Interim Director, HR, and really all of management and all of the heads of schools, etc., they're all being brought together to ensure that we have a culture, a work culture, that accepts accountability as a norm, and that we enforce that accountability through our normal work and also very significantly in performance management. And so all of that is being fine-tuned. So essentially, we want to be able to really reward, beyond what we are doing, all the people who make a difference to the university, who really are loyal, who are committed, who are delivering on our things that we praise the university for. So they should really be rewarded much better. At the same time, we need to deal with the people who are not pulling their weight, as a result of which the majority of the people have to pick up the slack. It's not fair, it's not equitable. Just imagine if everybody at the university were functioning at the level of our star performance, where would we be? And everybody has the capability to do it. It's a question of creating the culture, it's a question of incentivizing and disincentivizing the right and wrong things. It's a very difficult thing to do, but we need to sort of say, well, that's where we want to go. I think I've just been going through the report on HR, and HR has been a major concern and possibly our biggest risk. And it's good to see that although it has been in a problematic situation, we are beginning to see improvements that we can measure. And I went through some of them in terms of the employee relations, relationships with our stakeholders. We are bringing iPerform back. We are introducing position control on our positions. We are improving. There has been an improvement from what I can gauge in the way the staff review committee has been working. There's a lot more emphasis on a good system of probation, good system of feedback, and iPerform should work. And so there is now some sense that, yes, we are moving from a low point to where we want to go, and we are putting more resources in HR. And also, HR is not just the business of HR office. It is everybody's business. Every manager is a HR manager, okay? And that in fact is one of our weaknesses. Everybody, as soon as you say HR, they focus on HR office. But they are not the only player in achieving high-performing culture. Okay, and finally, a couple of just points. As a university, we notice that the share of the resources going to academic delivery is not consistent with how it is in most universities. So slowly over time, the Finance Committee and Council has asked us to shift more resources as we can towards the academic staffing, to academic systems, etc. And EDF is under instruction to keep on making some progress towards that. And I can't emphasize enough the fact that nobody is in this new world getting any new big money. Very few people will get that. That time has gone. What everybody is going to do is basically going to say you are lucky to maintain your funding, right? You're lucky it's not being cut. We might pick up some new funds, and as you saw, governments gave us $4 million extra. That actually didn't make up even for inflation, okay? So the only way of you getting what you want, in the university getting what it wants, is to actually think very hard about what we do and perhaps let some things go and do the things that are crucial to us and do it well. Okay? So that you have a group of staff you can reward well. Okay? And so it brings you to this question about how efficiently is anything being done. So re-engineering of processes, cutting out all the inefficiencies, automating where you can, will release the funds that you can then deploy in other areas. And measurement is going to become a lot more important. Analytics are going to become more important. So we are engaging in that, and not always happy with the progress, but we are investing very significantly in that. And finally, we will have the 50th anniversary being launched in February. That is when the university's first students had come. And I do know some people who came not too long thereafter. And there are many of you who have been here a long time, and many of you new who have joined this exciting place. And I hope very much that next year, throughout the year, we will be celebrating what can be termed as extraordinary success of the university in this time. It is regarded as the most successful regional institution, and lots of the regional initiatives fell by the wayside. USP continued, and we will have produced by then more than 50,000 graduates. And as I said, the reputation is very good. So we will celebrate all of that. But equally, we want to position the university for the next 50 years, to the next 100 years. And so next year, I'm hoping that we will be celebrating and reflecting and positioning the university for the future. And all of us, I would like to invite all of you to join. And for me, that will be the end of a very interesting and long journey. Okay? Because I joined the university in 1976, and I've been in the Vice Chancellor's office for a quarter century, starting in 1990 in one capacity or another, and I've been through a very tumultuous sort of journey of achievement and coups and difficulties. But I think next year I'm hoping that we'll all really ride this wave. And then all of you who remain will really feel enthused about the future of the university. So that's all I wanted to say. And I now invite you to make any comments. I went through the issues that were raised, and I'm satisfied that bulk of them have been addressed. I did not raise the issue of security. I'm sure that will come up in the questions. So I'll really open it up for comments, questions. And I've got my team here who will field the questions in many cases when you ask the questions. Okay? I ask that you just identify yourself before you ask the question, and we should have somebody going around with mics. We have only one mic? Okay, so we'll just make sure that, like one side has a mic, another side has a mic. And if you raise your hand, then I'll know who should be given the chance to ask the question. So you've got the mic, yeah? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. My name is Nicholas Holter. I'm a lecturer in the School of Social Sciences. Can you please clarify USP's policy on dispute resolution? I was under the impression that if a staff member has a dispute with a supervisor, then mediation is the first step. But the recent suspension of my colleague Morgan Tuimalele-Fano without mediation has set an alarming precedent. Can you please clarify your position on USP policy?
I'll ask the Deputy VC to clarify that for you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I can't, and you'll understand that why not. I can't comment on the particular case you raise, but I will say that in terms of disputes between members of staff, normally we would encourage mediation where that is possible and where that is agreed to by the parties concerned. That would be the first step, and mediation might take many different forms. It might be mediation through just encouraging the parties to talk together themselves. It might be mediation supported by a member of the Human Resources Department or by a senior member of staff in the university. It may be by mediation externally, but it does depend upon the consent of the individuals to participate in that process. And of course, not all disputes are appropriate for mediation. It depends entirely upon the circumstances and the nature of the allegations, and including the broader context and history which may, in some situations, exist in relation to previous issues and disputes between the parties. So I think that's all I can say in relation to that, but I hope it does clarify for everybody concerned that our first course of action, our preferred course of action in case of disputes, and I say it depends on the seriousness a little bit as well, but on the first course of action where there is a dispute between two people, including between members of staff and their supervisors, or vice versa, that we would encourage mediation where at all possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, if there aren't other questions, I'll raise one. I'm not sure if I need this. I'll raise one on security then,
Sure.
Chancellor. This is just probably going to distort if it gets anywhere near my voice. Sorry. We have here a letter which I think...
Can I ask that this forum not be used to distribute certain things? You raised the...
Just for you.
No, I've received the letter.
Oh, okay, I'll take
Okay.
it. So, Vice Chancellor, I'm speaking on behalf of residents
Sure.
on campus.
Sure.
Vice Chancellors, DVCs, professors, long-term employees,
Sure.
people who sacrifice for the university every day.
Sure.
There's been 12 break-ins or home invasions on campus in the last 2 months. 9 residential properties have been broken into, some of them twice. There are no security bars on any of those properties that have been broken into, and for some of them, the front door itself is not secure. There was a recent incident where a security guard was hospitalised after being smashed in the face with a rock at the top gate following a break-in of the Western Union on campus. A member of SMT's house was invaded while he was home. He's lucky that he wasn't hospitalised. Security of residents and security on campus has crossed a line. Separately and together, we had, as residents, have engaged with USP's agent, the Director of Commercial Operations. Several staff, Vice Chancellor, have been told, if you don't like it, move, emphatically. This response from a member of SMT, what impact do you think that has on staff morale? From good to excellent? Loyal, hard-working staff, treated with open disdain and disrespect by an SMT member after their home was violated and their families threatened. My own property was broken into. I have views of your front deck on the 16th of August. The thieves came through my front door, the screen door, and then the aluminium front door, which was bolted and locked, and which was simply popped and opened. A security door was, the installation of a security door was completed last Friday, 6 weeks after the break-in. I met yesterday with the Director of Commercial Operations and I inquired about security measures. I asked what's being done about this, and he said to me, nothing, like this, in that way. Which isn't even true. Commercial Operations has helped fund 2 additional security guards. There have been steps taken in relation to grass cuttings on campus, trying to ensure that they have security clearances and there are good security protocols for them to have visitors passes. And I was told there's some measures being taken in relation to security bars, but nothing specific. So there would be dishonest communication, shows a lack of good faith in communicating with residents, and that this represents the directing mind and will of the university is indefensible. Respect is a two-way street. Excellence is a two-way street. Residents and staff must receive the same respect we give. Anything less undermines everything you've sought to build for the university over the last 25 years. I have a final point on vacancies. There's over 20 vacant properties, probably more, on campus. I've done the research and I can provide an annotated bibliography. Vacant properties correlate strongly with an increase in crime rate. Vacant properties give thieves places to hide and they reduce passive surveillance in communities. Given the high demand for accommodation, there's little excuse for there to be vacant properties on campus. I was advised that people are not bidding at the reserved price. Leaving aside that process and leaving aside confusing legal questions about the rent freeze and the way that's circumvented, a tenanted property is a commercial asset. A vacant property is a liability. In the year to date, that's an unrealised asset of over $300,000 at a conservative rent. We hope you'll read and consider the letter, and we hope our reasonable requests are considered, and we look forward to contributing constructively to the safety of the staff and residents on campus.
Thank you very much. Security is, of course, a great concern for us. When I became aware of some of the break-ins, I actually brought it as a formal item for senior management to look at exactly what was going on, what we could do, and that is when we really sort of tried to see whether there was a link between grass cutters and other people doing landscaping and things, and burglary. And there was a very strong suggestion. So we introduced measures about police clearance being obtained, giving them cards, etc. So we've been concerned about that because I also live on the campus. Obviously, I want to make sure that I can give the students full assurance about security. I want to give the staff security, and I want to give the tenants assurances about their security because security is very important part of a community. So we share the concerns about that. We have, as you say, asked commercial to see whether we can increase the security. We now are manning the gate at the back. And after I saw your letter, which I will write and say we should meet, because really all of this is a shared concern and a shared responsibility to find a solution. Some of these things are very easy. I was walking the other day, some lights were not working. So sometimes it's a question of somebody alert, making sure all the lights work, etc. Sometimes a matter of fixing some new lights, and we are certainly keen to invest in those things. I will ask the Director Commercial to respond to some of those, but I just want to say broadly that we must have a secure USP, but also keep in mind that we are living in Fiji and we are part of the community in Suva, and we try and do the best we can, but nobody guarantees anybody's security absolutely. So we need to sort of just be aware that we are, in a way, privileged to be part of the gated USP community. We are trying to see how much gating we can do, because universities by nature do not want to check everybody who is coming in. And in somewhere in between, we hope that we are going to be feeling much more secure. So we will have those meetings. I encourage people to think for themselves. I do want us to separate the tenancy issues with staff issues. Because as a tenant, you actually have a right as a tenant. It's incidental that you are a staff member. But as a staff member, when you're walking around, I mean, I look at the security, pretty much any individual, when walking around the university, going to the labs, going to the classes, must feel absolutely secure. That's our main responsibility. I feel a slight sense of imbalance in lack of focus on student security. And simply because all of us in positions are staff members, we need to make sure that we are focusing on security for students. And then we look at security of tenants as a group, or anybody else who is on our campus. Right? So I think and it's not, I mean, there have been huge burglaries. What I'm being told is that along the Lauderdale Bay Road, there are lots of burglaries along Suva Point, and we remain the safest community at the moment. We just want to build on that and not succumb to the general trends in the community. Okay. I'm wondering, Arvind, whether you want to respond to that, or we leave it as SMT will be looking at all of those issues and we will be meeting with the delegations.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor. Thanks for those issues that you've raised, and we've got the letter too. We are aware of all those issues. I just want to point out, once somebody's house is broken into or something else happens which becomes a criminal offense, that particular incident is taken over by the police. And from there onwards, the security and the university cannot get involved in that incident until the police has cleared. And until the police has cleared the site for it to be repaired. Once they've collected the forensic evidence, only then USP gets involved and commercial gets involved as a landlord to put the site back in order. In terms of that incident, we are not able to actually follow that through because it is a criminal offense. It's with the police. I believe that was the question that was asked to me in the office. What am I doing about that particular burglary? And I have those emails from this person asking, what are we doing about this break-in? We are not able to actually follow that through. We don't have the resources to do that for a particular crime. I have put in a lot of things that actually have been outlined as measures to actually try and curb the break-ins and the criminal offense that's happening. We are also trying to do more. We have just yesterday start putting in solid doors in the house that was broken just opposite my property, up on the hill. We have started putting solid doors that hopefully the thieves can't break. But the thieves are very, very sophisticated. They are coming with very, very sophisticated equipment to break in. So we are not able to give you full assurance that they won't be able to break in. I mean, they are coming with car jacks. They are coming with screwdrivers and hammers and bolt cutters. So it's quite difficult. I think we just want to highlight this concern to the staff members that you also have a responsibility of your own security. There are so many instances where tenants are refusing to put their lights on because they're trying to save this power bill. They also do not want to actually put in extra measures for their own security. Once you are in the house and a tenant, you also have a part responsibility of your own security. So I understand the member of SMT had this liquor right facing on the windows so the thieves could see them. So please, those are very, very important measures that you take so thieves can't see things inside that you've got in the house. I think those are major attractions for thieves, and some of the crimes that have happened for that reason. I think we are willing to actually work together and we are willing to meet and we'll see how we can actually sort out the problem. In terms of the vacant houses that we have on campus, commercial has plans, have their own plans on what they are going to do in future. That is a commercial decision, and I think that that decision should be left with commercial, what our plans are. And we have plans. It is not the decision that tenants should decide that this house should be given out right now. We will try and put in security measures in those places, but if you notice that some of our houses are being reworked and remodeled, because they're going to be remodeled for a design where staff can actually afford those houses. That's what we are actually working on. Thank you, Vice Chancellor.
Okay, so I think the summary of that is it is a concern, it is an important concern, and we've done some things. SMT has had meetings on it. We will have more meetings with the staff, and then we'll do things that make all of us more confident about our safety at the campus. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you, VC. My name is Arish Lal and I'm from DMCA. I think while we are on the topic of security, it's imperative for me to make a comment. In light of all the robberies, all the break-ins and other security issues taking place at the campus, we totally understand that the need to raise our security and the way we do it needs to be reviewed. However, on the contrary, I think that the way, the manner and the etiquette in which we relate to our students, mainly at the front gate, is critical as well. Because I have personally seen, because my office is just opposite the security gate, and the way there are some security officials that are dealing with students, the manner in which they talk, the manner in which they handle students, it is very unprofessional. While our section is working strenuously hard in order to get enrollments high, in order to keep the image of the university high, the experiences of students of such nature, it will really change their behavior or change their opinion of the university. So my humble plea is for the security to change their approach, become more professional, and become more approachable. There's a way we deal with students, and mainly students as they are our bread and butter. Thank you.
Ismaili, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you. Yes, you will notice that in the last 3 or about a month now, we have stepped up checking of ID here in campus. And what I've seen is that there are some improvement to the number of reports that we are getting, especially in the library. It has sort of become a daily thing when students lose a laptop, which costs thousands of dollars. I have had parents calling me up, coming into my office, crying, students coming in, losing all their wallet, everything. And in the past 3 weeks, I've noticed there were no reported thefts in the library. And that is one of the measures that we have taken. But yes, it is true that we need to be more customer-oriented in approaching students. You will also, I also would like to advise that a lot of students do not carry ID cards. A majority of students coming into campus, and we do not know who is a student, who is not a student. They come into the labs, they use up the labs. Sometimes they used to use other students' passwords to, they occupy the computers. And here are the students who actually pay, they're sitting outside not able to access those computers. So this is the measure that we have taken. It's just interesting, I met the Commissioner of Police the day before yesterday, and he told me that there is a report that come into his desk. And he mentioned that he saw my name on the report, that students are actually complaining to the police that we are doing these ID checks. But I think that's, I don't know how you look at that, but we're trying to improve, and I will talk to our guards. Thank you.
Okay. So I think there is a way in which you can be firm without being unprofessional or offensive. And it's particularly important for the university to maintain a very professional approach to things. But I think on checking the IDs, I almost feel that if a student is using any of our facilities, and if they cannot produce the ID, they should be removed from those facilities. Because really, while we don't want to make it compulsory that we check everybody's ID coming in, we should have a standing policy that at any time, the security can ask for your ID. And that's, you know, it's a bit like going through the airport and having to do all these things. I mean, that is more intrusive. But it is for avoiding the sorts of things, because I've also heard about many people just, you know, doing quite sophisticated things to appear like students, and then do things that against the students and against the university. So maybe we should look at, maybe Richard, you can look at whether there is a policy, or we can reinforce a policy that empowers the security to require students and I'm not sure staff, but you know, well, I guess they should be empowered to ask anybody who is at the university to produce their identification. We do. And if the students do not have ID, are the security then asking them to leave our facilities? So you have that authority. All we ask is that it be done, you know, in a professional manner. Yeah? Okay.
Hi, I'm Yara from Pacific Studies. I have a question about the what I think, because I'm not sure I've been asking, but there's a new change in when you sign a contract, you have to work for 2 years in order for your trip back home to be paid. That's what my understanding of a new policy is. I have a question about that, because when I came here 2.5 years ago, that was not policy yet. I was of the understanding that if I come all the way from the Netherlands and I work here, if for whatever reason I have to go back home, then that would be possible.
You mean after resigning?
Yes, okay. For whatever reason.
Okay.
Because you are on the other side of the world, very many of us who come from overseas, and there can be many reasons why you have to resign. Okay. I've now renewed my contract, but I'm concerned about this change because I don't know what's going to happen in the future. My family and everybody is on the other side of the world. Something can happen to me or my son. I want to feel that I have the option to go home safely, especially after already serving a 3-year contract. So I don't know exactly what the regulations are in relation to that. I'm not saying I want to resign, but I want to feel that I have the option instead of being scared that I have to have a savings account now in case of an emergency, that I can resign and go home.
Okay. So in the end, maybe interim director will confirm. But when we appoint new staff, spend money to bring them to the university, we do so on the expectation that they will serve the contract. And if not, that they will certainly serve a minimum period of that contract. So if you don't, like you promised to serve for 3 years, and you resign after 12 months, then the university has a right to not have to repatriate you fully. But I think it's best, because the technical thing, we ask the director to respond to you fully. Can we have the mic?
Thank you for the question. Yes, the Vice Chancellor is correct with the new ordinance. We have the changes in the home passage where we bring someone from overseas and then we repatriate them at the end of the contract. But as the Vice Chancellor said...
Not at the end of the contract.
The end of the employment. Employment when you finish off the... Right? So you may finish off your contract and then you want to go, then we'll repatriate. And as you said, there are circumstances where the university has options of maybe doing partial or considering all these circumstances and then decide on the full amount of repatriation for you or for the family. But as I said, it is a measure in terms of doing such a big investment in bringing someone in. And then if you decide to, suddenly, without a valid reason, go within few months, then the university should have the right to, which is within the policies now, to make a judgment on that.
Okay. So can I just clarify, because we can go from a simple thing to a more complex thing. There are two provisions that one is talking about. In your case, you're talking about the university essentially saying, we spend all this money to bring you here because we have a reasonable expectation of you performing the contract that you have signed, okay? But we know that people will resign sometime, so I think, subject to correction from HR, if you perform your contract for at least 18 months, right, then we will not ask for anything back. Yes, but if you don't even do half of your contract, then I think you owe the university some money because we will spend that. So we will prorate. We will prorate that. So if we spend $5,000 on bringing you here and you've done only half, then you have to pay the university for the other half. On the other hand, you go beyond the half, then you don't have to pay anything back.
My understanding that it's 24 months from what I've seen in the policies.
Okay, so maybe 18 months was 24 months.
Can I just address the specific issue, because you were talking about essentially a renewal of contract. So the issue in relation to anybody who has a renewal of contract, the repatriation is concerned with the period of employment, not the period of any specific contract. So in relation to the minimum time of employment, that is included in the contract. So that's an issue to look at in terms of the contract. Once one moves on to a new contract or a contract renewal, the period of employment is the issue. So anybody who has been on a 3-year contract and the contract is extended by 3 years, or in the future by 5 years if they're on a 5-year contract, the period which is covered, the minimum period is covered, would have been covered within the initial contract. So in your own case, which you're referring to, I think here, it's not. It is you are entirely covered if you were to resign within the period of the second contract or a third contract at an earlier point, because you will have been here. Your initial period would have been covered by your first contract.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now everybody is satisfied.
So just responding to the security issue. First, I would like to admit there's room for improvement in the gates. But importantly, it's very important that we understand each other.
Sure.
It's a relationship between all staff, because we are only complement to the purpose of the strategic plan 2018. and we are part of that mission and vision. So we should complement each other. In some instances, we've been told some very harsh words at the gates in dealing with people coming in. Some have the attitude of looking down at security. We heard some people told us that you are not well-educated people. So if we understand each other, and we know we are playing a role in building quality education in the university. So we have all the parts to play.
Sure.
If we play our role and we complement each other, I think we can come up to a good understanding in partnership in this area. And secondly, on ID card checks. We have some problem with ID cards because some ID cards have been expired but been carried out by students. And we have normally have the computers at the gate, but now there's no more computers at the gate. So we have only one to refer to, which is in control. So we don't know which one is the current student and which one has been expired. So some been carrying the ID cards from the 2000, but they are no longer students.
I thought that when we check the ID card, it means checking for your current ID card. So if you don't have a current ID card, you are out.
How can we know this is a current student unless we can contact control to tell us it's a current student?
Okay, so we'll ask DVC to respond to that.
Yeah, and the problem with this is I was only made aware recently that even the current cards do not have a date on them, but from next year that will be reinstated, that they will have the date on them. So at the moment, if you have a card, it has no date on it, so if it's an old card, we're not in the position of being able to tell whether the student is a current student. What security were doing, as just mentioned, was checking that ID number against the database, but if you don't have a computer, you can't do that.
Okay, so this won't be a problem from next year? Okay. I wasn't aware that this ID card had no expiry. Yeah, Jason?
Just a quick question, VC, because I get asked this question every month by my own staff. I'm just wondering if we can have an update for the INJ job evaluation, because we've heard that it's delayed until next year.
Okay. IDHR?
Thank you, Jason, for the question. Yes, unfortunately, there has been a delay. This was an unfortunate incident that was caused. But we are now trying very hard to bring someone else to actually work on the INJ job evaluations. But so what had happened is there was an agreement signed between USP and PwC to carry out the job evaluation. But the time period shifted and we missed it, and then PwC became very busy and could not take on this at our required time frame. So we are now working to cancel that commitment and then do a sort of an in-house system that used to be. So the person would be coming in within a month's time, and we will commence with the job evaluation for INJ staff. Thank you.
Thank you. I must say that this is a very complex place. So we have 12 union agreements. Because they are all triennial, most of them are coming to an end next year. So if you can imagine that getting this thing organized here, just imagine all the union agreements in all the regional campuses. So we are struggling actually with those. So the only way of doing that is to bring people who just are focused on getting all the agreements done. But fortunately, we are now in a much better position with our comparative data and the like, so it should not take that long. No, I get this sense, okay, yeah.
Thank you, VC. I just want to add on to the INJ evaluation.
Sure.
Just recently, there was a vacancy that was advertised, and I noticed that the salary scale for that position and what staff currently are getting, there's a big disparity in that. I just wanted to know if how is that determined, and I just feel there's no fairness in what the current staff are getting and what was advertised. Thank you.
Okay, and what is advertised is more or less?
Very much more.
More.
It is on the higher range of the INJ band.
Because INJ won't be covered under the delinking. Huh? So I think in this case, if you let the interim director know which position you're talking about, then we might be in a position to let you know what is happening. Okay. It is important that positions that have similar titles, similar jobs, etc., carry the same terms and conditions. So, because if you suddenly vary these things, then with 1,800, 2,000 people, they begin to wonder why that is so. So I think it's very important for us to be consistent. So if you let him know, he will make sure that we can respond to that. Okay, please.
So, good morning, Vice Chancellor. I just wanted to ask, I heard I heard rumors that there might be a change in staff benefits for studying, for students, not for staff and family.
Okay.
I'm wondering whether this is correct, and if it's true, please, Vice Chancellor, don't take that away from us, especially if we are INJ and hourly staff. Thank you.
Okay, I'm afraid I am responsible for that feeling. I was just having a conversation with the unions and putting across what I'm really sort of saying. One is if we want the university to pay higher salaries, or if we want the university to have more security, or if you want the university to have better bandwidth, it needs money. And the money is not coming in easily. So you begin to look at what money you are losing, or what money need not be spent in a particular way. And we are also trying to make sure that there is equity in remuneration. So, and generally you want to, instead of giving people different sort of allowances, you pay them the salary. And that means all staff have that benefit. So we are spending close to, I think EDF, from memory, is inching towards $2 million that we forego in giving tuition concessions. So that's what it amounts to. Now, if you didn't give that concession, you could raise everybody's salary a little bit. And so we want to move towards removing all of the allowances and things that people are getting and bring that money into the main pot so that it can be addressed. Now, I didn't say we'll do it, but I said, see, we need to have transparency. All the monies that the university spends need to be accounted for the purposes that the university has in SP and other things. So that's my main thinking, that if we are giving such high discounts that nobody else gives, it is not normal part of the university's benefits, and you can take that money and skill the people in the way you want, right? Then there's something the university will need to think about. Potentially, I won't be the person doing it. But universities should think like that. And as much as possible, by putting things in the salary, you are making it equitable. I remember under a former vice chancellor, he was an economist, he looked at our housing policy and he said that's not equitable because only a tiny portion of USP staff were enjoying housing allowances. And 80% of the staff had no benefit, and he felt that it should be equitable. And he calculated all the money that the university was spending on housing and said we'll add it to the salary. And staff were happy, and so that's how the university basically stopped providing houses. And staff were happy because then everybody, not just the people who stayed in those houses, got the benefits. And I think broadly that's what the movement is in all modern HR thinking is, make it equitable, and where they differ, they should be in the way of special incentives. But I don't think it's going to happen. But we need to prepare ourselves about the thinking about how we need to basically settle on a total salary rather than have all these allowances which are not equitable. Okay, so I now do feel that we have exhausted the questions. Okay? As long as there is no burning question, I think we have come to the end of a fruitful session. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming. If you still have a question, you are welcome to email me, or more appropriately, those who are dealing with those in senior management. And I do want to emphasize the importance of communication, because quite often when you communicate fully, there is no problem. But if you don't let people know what is happening, why it's happening, then of course people don't know what is happening. And so I keep on saying we cannot over-communicate. Although sometimes you might get tired of the emails I send out, but I do want people to know. And I think I'd like to encourage all of you to communicate all the ways. And I do want you to provide feedback. So if something is going on, like if you're noticing something that should not have happened, provide the feedback, maybe to the people who are doing it, maybe to others. Because the other thing we do as a group is we don't communicate that feedback to the people who can make the difference. And most of the time it is to the person who is involved in it. And we might talk among ourselves, we might talk to our friends, but not actually let the person know. And sometimes you'll be surprised that if you let the person know, the person is actually a nice person. He just sort of says, well, I wasn't aware of what I may have been coming across as. So let's communicate. And thank you very much once again. And, just be part of the continuing journey that is, I think, very exciting, especially as we come to the 50th anniversary. So thank you very much. And I think we have refreshments. So join us for refreshments.